So let me give just a real quick brief interview. So Myriam Joire spent 4 years on the edit desk at Engadget, focused on mobile for a large period of time. After that, she would come on to be the chief evangelist for Pebble. And so you're going to have a hard time finding somebody who is as knowledgeable about mobile and wearable technology in general, hardware and software. She codes. She's a barista, Burning Man, and definitely something that I'm glad to count as a friend in this space. And so the first question I have, we can pass back and forth, is this. Pebble, you guys have been one of the leaders in the space. You have a big competitor coming, Apple. How afraid are you of Apple and this whole launch?
First, I want to say hi to everyone. Thanks for having me, Raj. Good question. I think a lot of people asking this, and I think it's a very fair question. But I think that it's actually a huge opportunity for us because it's the biggest marketing machine working for us right from the get-go. Right? Pebble is a brand. You guys know it because you're in wearables. You guys know it because you're in tech. You guys know it because you're in the media. You guys know it because you're an early adopter, perhaps. I don't have to sell to you guys. I don't have to sell Pebble to you. Where we're at now, with a $99 price point at Sam's Club in the US, which is like a wholesale supermarket, is we're at the point where wearables are, smart wearables, not just bands that keep track of a few steps or something, but a tiny little computer on your wrist is a commodity, $99, right? So Apple coming into the space completely validates what we've been doing for 6 years. In a major way. I mean, Google did it by coming out with Android Wear. But now Apple's doing it. It's just like, boom, it's it, we've arrived. And because people can't get an Apple Watch, and because we're the only iOS-compatible smartwatch on the market for the holidays, clearly this is not a bad thing for us at all. Because now we have mom and pop in middle America and in all parts of the world who don't know what a wearable is and walk into an actual retail store and see a Pebble for $99 and go, or 129 euros, or I think it is 99 UK pounds, and go, wow, I can buy this and it'll work with both my Android and iOS device, and I can kind of get going into this wearable universe and kind of get my feet wet without really taking a big commitment. So, they have a brand and they have reach that we just can only dream of having. And by having made the announcement and kind of putting their cards on the table, and we know what they're going to do. Obviously, it's going to be a high-end device for them in terms of pricing. It opens up a whole option of possibilities in an area we were already pretty much well established, which is kind of like the entry-level, mid-range. And so it's been fantastic. Every time somebody announces a new smartwatch, we sell more. And we've sold so much more since Apple launched. It's unbelievable. So it's really working, and we have a bunch of tricks up our sleeve. We've been doing this for 6 years. If you look at, the fact that Eric did another watch before Pebble called Impulse, which had, this will sound familiar to you, an OLED display and 1 day battery life. See what I'm saying? And so, now we have a watch that has 5 to 7 day battery life with a really interesting e-paper display technology. Because what we found is for stickiness, for simplicity, if you don't want to look at spec sheet, you don't want to look at, you don't want to look at what the laundry list of features are. You want to look at a user experience and that connection you were talking about earlier. And if you don't have that, you don't have a product. And so, that's what we offer, and we focus on what people want, and what people want is not have to worry about battery life. So, Apple, Google, and to some other extent, companies like Samsung before them coming into the market has just been a boon to us. It just makes, basically makes it so that it's Pebble, Google, and Apple playing the game.
I totally dig it. I think one of the things that a lot of these guys are kind of learning and really starting to understand is that, you guys launched an experiential thing for a lot of the entrepreneurs out there. You guys launched your crowdfunding campaign, and then you guys had quite a bit of delays. Like, how did that impact your community? Like, what were the things that you guys did to kind of overcome that? Because right now, if you can release the stickiness numbers that you guys have or any of the sales numbers, like I think that's really impressive because it goes contrary to what a lot of the analysts are saying out there in the marketplace.
Well, I think we're a bit of a unique case, right? Because we've really made a product that is sticky. I don't think the competition is quite at this level of stickiness we have. I don't want to give specific numbers, but basically, it's something like the big majority, in the 70 to 80%, but don't quote me on that number, of watches that are actually have gone to a consumer and been paid for by a consumer is on a consumer's wrist today and being used, not in a drawer somewhere rotting away. And that's the level of stickiness that nobody else has been able to see. To answer your question about, you have to understand the Kickstarter thing. Eric wanted to make, and his small team of friends basically did a Kickstarter where they wanted to make 1,000 watches. And they ended up and raise $100,000. And they ended up raising $10.3 million and having to make over 90,000 watches. So, as you can imagine, as you know also from the crowdfunding world, very few companies actually launch properly, right? I mean, it's one thing to actually succeed at raising the funds, you're the goal and reaching your goal or exceeding your goal, but how many of them have done that and then had a really hard time, a year, 2 years, 3-year delay launching and shipping to their customers, right? So I think Pebble doing it in a year wasn't actually that bad. It was, they were overambitious. I was in the company at the time, so that's why I say they. We were overambitious at the time, I think, trying to get this out the door in 6 months. There's no way. You need to mold that many, you need to get the tooling right. It's a waterproof device. That brings a whole new dimension of complexity. And we've revised our original plastic hardware 3 times now to ease the manufacturing process, even though externally they look the same. Just because, it was designed to be made 1,000 of, not to be made millions of. And now it's redesigned to be made millions of. And there's a big difference. And I think one of the challenges for successful Kickstarters and crowdfunding companies is, how do you scale? You don't want to concern yourself with that at first, because otherwise you'll never get anything done. But once you start getting successful, one of the challenges is you got your money, you exceeded your goal, everybody loves you, you get the press's attention. How do you get to the point where you deliver the product with the features you promised and continue growing that product and then streamline your manufacturing, your production? The reason we can make Pebble $99 when it was $150 is because the parts are getting cheaper, our manufacturing chops are getting better, and it gets to the point where we can actually sell at a lower price and be more profitable. So it's really important people understand that, the manufacturing challenges are a huge deal. And that's why when you see Apple make a watch as exquisite in terms of materials, build and design and all that as what they're doing, of course they're going to sell it for $350 at the base price. I think we're going to be all blown away when Apple ships the stainless steel and gold version and they cost $1,000 and $10,000 respectively. That's what's going to happen. And people are going to go, what are they doing? And what they're doing is aiming squarely for Rolex and Philippe Patek and those kind of watchmakers and trying to put them in the dustbin of history. And I think that's smart, because you can still make a $350 aluminum watch and people will pay for it because of your brand. In the same way as people spend $200 on crappy Beats headphones. I mean, I'm an audio person, they sound like shit, right? But people love them. So,
I love it. I already get started. So what are some tips you can give to young pre-crowdfunding entrepreneurs that are out there in the market, as far as building community and organizing prior to launch?
So community is your key, right? I think you touched on this and I didn't really expand on it too much, but we had a lot of upset and angry people, of course, because we said we would ship within 6 months and it took us a year to ship. It took us longer. If you ordered towards the end of the Kickstarter, I think you didn't get your watch for about a year and a half after we capped off the Kickstarter campaign. So, we're aware of that and we tried really hard to be, to engage with that community and explain to them the challenges we had and tell them we cared and we were going to get there. And holding their hands and going there together with them. And I think the other thing that's huge is that you have to understand that one of the big differences of Pebble versus the other smartwatch and wearable companies is that we only do that. We don't build fridges and TVs like Samsung, or laptops and phones and tablets like Apple. We make one thing, and that's an entire platform ecosystem of wearable in-house. We do the OS for the watch, which is a real-time OS that's super power efficient. That's why you can't run Android and iOS on a watch, not with today's technology, unless you want your battery to die instantly, because you need a CPU that can run these OSs properly, and then that CPU is going to be a pretty powerful CPU. Like Snapdragon 400 on Android Wear, that's like a mid-range phone processor. Like low-end Android phones sold in developing countries have lesser processors than the Android Wear watches. Okay? So it doesn't scale. It's the same. Remember how a good example, Microsoft tried to take Windows CE or whatever it was called, and turn it into a mobile operating system, Windows Mobile. And that just didn't work. It wasn't until they did Windows Phone and kind of built something from scratch to run on the hardware that at the time was sustainable in terms of efficiency, that they were able to be, well, they're not successful, but to make a product that was compelling. You know, they weren't successful because they did it too late. I think if Windows Phone had come out 3 years prior, I think it would be a big deal today. And Android or Google and Apple got that. So we make everything in-house, the OS, we even do our prototyping, our design, our industrial mechanical design in-house. You do everything from our e-commerce website to our app store, which is in the cloud. And, we have great relationships with Apple and Google. We have an app store inside an iOS app. We're the only company in the world with an app store inside the iOS ecosystem. And they let us do it. So that's the thing. We can only focus on one thing, and because we only focus on that thing and it's an open platform, anyone can plug into it. We can have Evernote and Mercedes-Benz and Yelp and Foursquare and Apple and Google plug into it and play nice with us. Because that's all we do, and we do it really well. And so we have two customers, really. We have you guys, the end user who wears Pebble and benefits from it every day. And then we have you guys, also probably in here, the developers. That's our second customer. And the reason I'm bringing all this up is because to go back to community. By building a community of early adopters that were more likely through Kickstarter to be tech savvy and geeks and nerds and potentially interested in being developers, we put out an SDK early on, and that meant that we now were able to crowdsource all these new features and potentially killer apps for our product without doing it ourselves, because we just didn't have the resources. If you look at Pebble today, in the baked-in firmware, the default firmware you get today, you still don't have a timer. Yes, it's a watch. But we have something like 25 different timers you can download from the App Store. Some of them super specific, like for cooking, some for people who do like lap time running, some for fishing, like incredible shit. And you know why? Because we didn't have to worry about making a timer. Because the community made a timer. They made 25 timers or more.
I love it. Okay, well, we've got time for like one question. I know that there's going to be a lot of this today where we just want to keep people on stage all day. Who's gonna break the silence and be the first question of the day? Yeah, go ahead.
Being an OS guy myself, I've got to ask the operating system question, Myriam, because you proudly said that your operating system would be more power efficient and longer battery life than the big guys, iOS and Android. But how long before versions of these are able to match you?
I say a couple of years. That doesn't mean we can't grow our OS to be still more efficient and powerful. And at that point, instead of 5 to 7 day battery life, we get 3 weeks. It's just, ultimately, anybody who's more efficient in terms of battery life wins. Everybody knows that. Look at other phones today. Apple finally launches an iPhone 6 Plus that's gigantic. People love it because the battery life kicks ass. Right? I mean, it's just a no-brainer, right? And right now, the only way you're going to get good battery life out of a phone is to make a giant phone.
Well, Myriam, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us on that long trip, all the way from America. I appreciate it.